3 days, just 3 days, and we will be able to play Remnant. Actually, it could be less than that depending on when you're watching this video, but regardless, very good morning ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again in another video on Remnant from the Ashes. Being this close to the game release and not being able to play it yet, god, it's painful. At this point I'm pretty much sitting in my room doing nothing but waiting, thinking about the character I'm gonna make, the builds I'm gonna go for, and the weapons I'm gonna use. There are 40 different types of weapons in this game, each one of them unique in its own aspect. If you are not familiar with Remnant, in fact, this is not a regular looter shooter game when you're gonna grind the same weapon over and over, killing the same boss hundreds of times, in hope to get the ultimate legendary special very good ultra rare purple version of it, with only 0.04% chance to drop. No, you're going to find the weapon. And that's it. You can upgrade it, you can customize it with any of the many mods in the game, but ultimately it will be the way you will use it and the way you will take advantage of its features that will make the difference in combat. So strap in, because today we're gonna take a closer look on 10 very interesting weapons that we've seen so far in Remnant. Small disclaimer here, everything we've seen so far is still development build. Even now, this close to the release date, there could be last minute changes, so just be aware of that. Starting off with maybe the coolest and my favorite so far between those they have been shown off, the Defiler. It will take the handgun slot, so it's kind of a sidearm, but really this thing looks to be powerful enough to be your primary weapon. It works pretty much like a shotgun, but instead of shooting an array of bullets, just like any other shotgun, its rounds are focused into a star-shaped fire, very powerful with great stopping power. It looks to be great for crowd control at close distance, and that's a huge plus. This guy is a range-focused player, with his anti-rifle being the strongest weapon in his arsenal, but he was not afraid of tackling large group of enemies close to him thanks to this gun. Being a boss weapon, we can see that this gun requires a lot more rare material to be upgraded. However, every upgrade on a boss weapon is worth 2 levels of upgrade on a regular weapon. Normal guns in fact can be upgraded to plus 20, while boss weapon only to plus 10. That's because they are supposed to be stronger. Also, boss weapon cannot be modded, they come in fact with a built-in type of mod that it's unremovable. But honestly, why should you remove something this cool in the first place? This gun mods shoots a barrage of radioactive projectiles that inflict a lot of damage, inflicting radioactive status to your enemies, and in case you miss, they will bounce off the walls and eat other enemies. Swapping these mods? I don't think so. But now for the big question, where do we get this beast? Well, by putting together all the information that we've been given so far, I can tell you where to get this weapon. Or at least, close to it, because randomly generated dungeons. You see, on the last stream, Sofetch, the community manager, said that to get there on Corsus, the planet he was showing off in the livestream, he naturally progressed through the game up to that point. So that means that all of his progress were legit and everything he had was obtainable during the game up to that point. So, by taking in consideration that he showed us the teleport screen menu from the crystal in World 13, that clearly stated that Corsus was the third world to be visited after Earth and the desert planet, we can clearly say that this weapon boss material comes from the second world boss. More confirmation on my theory comes from the portal that he showed us at the beginning of the stream, and there we can see clearly a meta room on the other side. I don't know about you, but that looks to me pretty much like this level, which is a follow-up section of the desert world. On top of that, the weapon shares the same metallic theme of this underground alien base. And it deals radioactive damage. And which bosses we've seen so far that inflict radioactive damage? Boom baby! This thing! Now, it is completely possible that there is another world boss that we haven't seen at the end of the alien base that also deals radioactive damage, since even bosses are randomly generated. A boss that you may fight in this room I don't know, but I can tell you 100% sure that you can get the Defiler from one of the bosses in the second world. And you may thinking, wait a second, what about the first world bosses? Why it cannot, give you the Defiler? Well, this brings me to weapon number 2, the big fat hammer. Another one of the new weapons that they shown off in the latest stream. Its actual name is Petrified Maul. This hammer is a rot weapon. It's clear as day by just looking at it, but if you still have any doubt, it deals rot damage. It's in the description. So pretty much I made my points there. It deals a lot. It's a very big 80 points of damage, and it's another boss weapon. And you can clearly identify that from the fact that even being a melee weapon, it has a special effect. Usually melee weapons are not able to have any mods on them, but this one has a special effect called Heavy Impact. It has a 35% of chance to inflict 100% additional stagger with each hit of the combo. Plus the charge attacks have 100% chance to inflict the bonus stagger damage. So with the right melee build you can potentially stunlock everything, making this thing an exceptional weapon for melee characters. But where to get it? Well, it comes from Earth, and that's for sure since rot enemies are there, but from which boss? Well, again, we have to guess. Personally, my money are on this thing. It's huge and it adds just like the hammer. Plus, it makes much more sense to make a melee type of weapon out of an empty remains rather than something that shoots. At third spot we have the beam rifle, which is a regular weapon. You can in fact put any mods you want in this thing, but the cool thing about this weapon is the way it fires. I find this weapon very interesting because of the way it works. In fact, in the description says that the damage dealt increase the longer you hold the trigger. And if that means that the longer you keep its fire focused on an enemy, the greater the damage is, this thing it's gonna be an absolute beast against huge enemies like bosses. The bigger the target is, the better, cause you will have a much more wide surface to focus the beam on, and big usually means low, not always, but in most cases it does, so it is definitely something you wanna keep in mind when you find this rifle. And for this weapon I can show you the location where you can have a chance to find it. Again, randomly generated loot maps, always changing, but I found a video where the player picks it up. It's gonna be in the second world somewhere inside the alien base, so if you're after this thing, search that base top to bottom, and best of luck, I hope it will spawn for you. Speaking of rifles, I wanna talk about the sniper rifle. It looks to be an amazing weapon for ranged characters. Being able to snipe enemies from afar, staying out of range is definitely a huge plus. It looks to be very strong, with a great damage capability, and it has of course a scope you can use. For sure it will come in handy when in wide open spaces, but it's fairly useless in close combat since it has only one round and takes a lot of time to reload. However, it is available on every playthrough. Devs say it's to be sort of hidden, but everybody can get it, so it can be a nice addition to your weapon collection. My guess is that this thing is gonna be somewhere hidden in World 13 or in any of the early game key points not affected by random generation. Or maybe given out after doing a quest for somebody, like that girl for example sells materials for upgrading stuff, but you can also see that she's wearing an hunter set, so maybe she's gonna ask you something and in exchange for the favor she's gonna give you the sniper rifle. Again, it's just a guess. Moving from slow to rapid fire, the submachine gun is another weapon I can't wait to use. This is more of a weapon that I want to mention in my list rather than an interesting one, since it's pretty basic. It's an handgun, it has weak single shots, but it's capable of rapid fire, excellent for crowd control in a short and mid distance, and it's a great support weapon that I am personally gonna use a lot because I just like rapid fires. And that's it. It's a basic weapon, you can buy it in World 13, it has 35 rounds and as any other normal weapon can be mounted. For the next one we're gonna stay in the handgun section with the hunting pistol. Now this thing has an amazing damage and it looks to be very powerful and quite accurate. but the big downsides are that it only has one round and it takes a bit to reload it. I'm sure it can be useful, maybe paired with a quick shooting weapon in the long gun slots. But when I think about sidearms, I think about something to complement another weapon. And because of that, this pistol doesn't look much appealing to me. Again, I'm sure it can be useful, but I don't think it will fit my playstyle. I don't see myself using it, at least on my first run. But that's exactly the reason I wanted to include it in this list, cause I don't see a lot of use for it, if not in very particular situations. But maybe some of you do, some of you may have an idea on how to make a build around it, so let me know in the comment section below. The hunting pistol is a quest reward, and what kind of quests, unfortunately, we don't know yet. The Revolver Magnum instead is quite different from the hunting pistol. It looks to inflict quite high damage, and it has a good stagger potential. Contrary to the hunting pistol, it has 6 rounds, and I believe it's gonna prove itself useful in many situations. Adding stagger power with a mid-high damage tier and a decent fire rate makes this one of the guns that I would see myself and a lot of other players using at the beginning of the game. Moving to another boss weapon, this one is definitely a cool one, because it's a crossbow. Many people were asking if there were bows or crossbows, and the devs never gave a straight answer for the bows, although I don't see them as a viable option in these kind of games, because you know, of the very low fire rate, unless it's a magical bow that deals insane damage. This crossbow, however, can be a good call. Sure, it takes its sweet time to reload, but it fires 5 arrows with a single shot, so it's gonna be incredibly powerful. On stream, it was dealing tons of damage to the enemies and it was not even upgraded, so it looks to be a viable option. Personally, I do think fits the idea of a survivor more than a bow, but that is just my opinion. The name of this thing is Devastator, and it can be obtained after defeating this blacksmith boss on Corsus, named the Unclean One. Very nice. Its mod shoots a huge pike through enemy bodies, staggering them. And they didn't show it too much on stream, but it kinda gave me the idea of being able to nail enemies onto walls. You need to admit it. Wouldn't that be super cool to just shoot through the enemy, piercing his body and the wall behind him and making it suddenly impossible to move for a set period of time? However, this is just my speculation. Now, for the last two, in one of the Gunfire gaming sessions we've seen a sight. It was black with glowing yellow dots. That, however, doesn't look a regular weapon to me. I bet it's some kind of boss weapon. I have unfortunately no idea on how to acquire this weapon, but in this video they are in Ye's shop. That, from what we've seen from the teleporting crystal, it should be directly after Corsus. Looking at this thing, doesn't look to be a rot weapon, but it looks to be a radioactive one, so maybe from the second world, or from Corsus maybe. Unfortunately, there is no much information, but it's a cool weapon, so I wanted to include it in this list. Now for the last weapon, and trust me, this is personal. There is a weapon that we have seen, but we have not seen. What I mean is that I saw it on menu screens loads of times, but I didn't see it in gameplay footage. And I am of course referring to the Adventure Sword. Now, the reason this thing is on the list is because I always see it into menu screens, but nobody ever uses it. Why? It's different from the scrap sword because it's a straight sword, the only straight sword we've seen so far in the game, while the scrap sword that we already been shown off a bunch of times, it's a curved sword. Like normally in games, curved swords are for like dexterity oriented characters, while straight swords are more for all-rounders, more versatiles in general. But in this game there aren't stats like dexterity or strength, yet this thing has almost half of the damage of the scrap sword. And you know, that is a scrap sword, while this is a proper sword. You know, scrap, actual made of metal, probably well smithed with some kind of knowledge sword. So what's the deal with this thing? Is it faster? Does it have a special effect? I don't know, maybe it has a better moveset, but I doubt it, since in Remnant the movesets are generally shared between two weapons of the same category. So, is this that bad that everybody doesn't even bother to try it out? Like, I need to know!